It is not easy being a night shift caretaker at a nursing home, but it definitely is rewarding. Our home, Hilltop Community, currently houses 12 residents of differing ages over 70, all great people who have contributed much towards building the world and society that I enjoy today. One of my assigned residents, Doug, who's 76, often fills my ear with many stories of his truly groundbreaking life. Although it's frowned upon to say such a thing, it would be impossible to deny that he is my favorite resident of the bunch. A difficulty of his, though, is that he struggles with schizophrenia, of which he was diagnosed many years ago. He regularly takes his medication for it, which helps him tremendously, but for the past 3 nights, once I arrive for my shift before dinner, he has been informing me of a strange reoccurring event. That a mysterious little boy has been visiting him in his room at night, waking him up. Now, it's a pretty strict rule here to not feed the delusions of our residents with mental conditions, so I've been cutting him off before he goes into further detail. I ask him, "Doug, have you taken your medication today?" To which he always has the same response. "Yeah," he says, before looking apologetic for even bringing up the matter. However, today something different occurs. I had just gotten to work and greeted him in his room as he sits up in his bed, leaned up against his pillow. He begins telling me again of his disturbance, and I reply as I normally do, but this time he's adamant and presses on. "You don't understand, Doug, the boy isn't real." I cut him off in attempts to calm him. Then he exclaims belligerently, "Ah, to hell with you!" before he lowers his head down towards his lap and begins crying softly. I can't bear to see him suffer like this. He needs comfort and reassurance right now, not my routine subtle rebuke. Sometimes the rules need to be bent in order to do what's right. Against my normal nature, I decide to do just that. "All right, Doug, tell me more about the boy." Doug stops and looks up at me, appearing somewhat stunned that I'm obliging him this time. He begins, "He wakes me up by shaking me, standing by the bed." "Okay, what does he do next?" I ask. "He looks terrified and just says, 'Follow me, I found something,' while pointing out the window." Doug points to the window facing the yard behind me. "And what does the boy look like?" I press on. "Like a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old." "Okay." He says to follow him. What happens next? "I tell him, 'No, go home, your folks are worried.' Then he looks sad and disappears through the window." I smile softly. "Look, Doug, let me show you. The boy isn't real. The window is locked. See?" I step over to the plexiglass window and press on it, trying to push it open. Predictably, it doesn't budge. "You see? There's a special key we need to open it." "No!" Tears quickly gather again in his eyes. "The boy does it, I swear to you." "Okay, Doug," I begin. "Let's talk about this later, okay? Besides, it's almost dinner time. Let's go over to the dining room." Doug slowly nods with the familiar defeated look on his face as I help him up out of bed. I walk with him down the hallway and into the dining room towards his table, the loud bustling of the other residents and caretakers filling our ears. Eventually, the time for lights out arrives, and I make my rounds situating my residents for the evening. Once they're all in bed, I go over to the recreation room and start brewing some coffee before sitting down on the large residential sofa. Normally, this is when I pull out my cards to enjoy some solitaire to pass the time, but I'm far too distracted, contemplating on whether or not I should have bent the rules to comfort Doug the way I did. After all, it didn't really seem to work, although he did very temporarily look somewhat relieved that I even listened to him at all. I think he did feel heard. Then I suddenly have an idea. If and probably when Doug begins rambling again about this on my next shift, I could assure him that I checked the cameras in the security room tonight with the guard. Perhaps that would work better at calming him down and hopefully convince him that this boy he keeps seeing is all in his imagination after all. With that, I decide to get up and walk over to the end of the first floor hallway to the security room, next to the kitchen. When I enter, I see the large screen with several panels of camera footage facing towards the desk where the home's nighttime guard, Roy, is sitting. He is currently occupied reading a book before he hears me walk in and turns to face me. "Oh, hey there," he says. "Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt," I respond. "I'm just here to check something out real quick." "Oh, no, by all means," he says, putting his book down. "What's up?" "Could you pull up the panel showing the outside of the south wall of the building facing the yard?" "Oh, yeah, sure thing," he says before spinning his chair back around and enlarging the live footage from the camera. I gasp. The footage displays a window on the wall that is wide open. Doug's. Roy jolts up and grabs the phone on his desk as he tells me, "Go check that resident's room now." Gathering myself from the shock, I turn and sprint down the hallway across the home towards Doug's room before quickly unlocking the door and bursting in. "Doug?" I ask in a panic. The bed is empty and there's no sign of him anywhere inside. I turn around and dash back to the security room. I race in to see Roy putting the phone back down into the receiver before turning back to face me. "Police units have been notified and are on the way," he says in a rushed voice. "You'll want to see this," he continues before turning back around and rewinding the footage to display the window slowly opening as if pushed. Only there was no arm displayed. A second or so passes before Doug is seen popping his head out, looking forward and moving his lips as if speaking to someone before stepping over the short wall and walking across the yard, into the forest and out of sight. I gulp as I feel my heartbeat pounding against my throat. "When was this?" I ask. "About 15 minutes ago," Roy responds, looking down and shaking his head, obviously embarrassed that he wasn't watching when it occurred. "I'm going after him," I say before quickly turning around and sprinting back out the door. "Protocol is that we wait for police," I hear Roy's voice yell, now already distantly behind me. As you could probably imagine, my mind is shifting between 1,000 thoughts at once. "This is all my fault," I panic aloud through a whisper as I bolt towards the back door of the home. "This is why we have the rules that I broke. How the hell did he get that window open?" I bust through the back door into the yard. I slow to a jog as I enter the tree line of the forest, pulling out my phone's flashlight, frantically pointing it from left to right, calling out, "Doug! Doug! Where are you?" After almost 2 long, agonizing minutes, my flashlight illuminates a man facing away, standing still, in all white pajamas. I breathe a sigh of relief. I slow down to a walk as I lightly touch Doug's shoulder from behind him. "Doug, you had me worried sick. Come on, let's go back to the..." I trail off as I notice that Doug is certainly not listening. His face is locked into what seems to be a trance, his eyes fixated towards the ground just a few feet away. "Doug, hey, can you hear me?" My eyes follow his gaze before locking onto the object of Doug's attention. My mind goes blank in what can only be described as absolute horror. Right there, laying before us, are 2 decomposed corpses, illuminated by the moonlight. One of a man and another of a young boy. "I said yes this time and followed him," Doug says, eyes still glued to the bodies. I'm ripped out of my shocked state and gently take Doug's shoulder, turning him away before walking us back to the home. We're both silent the entire way. When we get back, I lead us through the back door and take us over to the security room, where 2 officers are speaking with Roy. I explain to them what all happened and what we had seen in the forest. One of the officers calls backup units to investigate the scene as the other one listens to us, filling out his report. "A man and a boy, you say?" he asks. "It appeared that way, correct," I reply through quick breaths, heart still palpitating. He goes on, not looking up from his clipboard. Of course, we would need to wait for positive identification, but this sounds like it could be a missing persons case from months ago. A dad and his two boys. Very sad. But it doesn't sound like the other boy was there.
Oh,
Doug says, causing the officer and I to suddenly look up at him.
he was there. Believe me, he was there.